Ratan Naval Tata's story begins far from the polished boardrooms and global recognition that would one day define his name. His journey begins in a world filled with quiet emotions, unspoken struggles, and a search for identity. Born on December 28, 1937, into the prestigious Tata family, Ratan Tata entered a lineage known for its legacy of integrity, humility, and service to the nation. But unlike the privileged, protected childhood many imagine, his early life was marked by deep emotional upheaval that quietly shaped his character. When Ratan was just 10 years old, his parents, Naval Tata and Suna Tata, separated, a moment that cracked the foundation of his childhood and introduced him to pain long before fame ever touched his name. Divorce was rare and stigmatized in those days, and the young Ratan, sensitive, observant, and thoughtful, absorbed the weight of that silence. His emotional compass shifted, and suddenly he found himself navigating a world where the security of a united family was replaced with questions, uncertainties, and unresolved feelings. Raised afterward by his grandmother, Lady Navajbai Tata, Ratan discovered a new pillar of strength. She was disciplined yet warm, strict yet deeply caring, and under her guidance he learned early lessons of dignity, self-control, and emotional responsibility. For most children, life is about play, laughter, and exploration. For Ratan, childhood became an arena where he learned how to endure, observe, and grow silently. He discovered maturity before age, understanding that not every wound demands noise, some are healed through quiet endurance. His grandmother instilled in him a deep sense of humility. Despite belonging to one of the wealthiest and most respected families in India, Ratan grew up without extravagance or entitlement. Lady Navajbai ensured he remained grounded, teaching him through everyday moments that true richness comes from character, not comfort. There were no special privileges, no indulgent spoiling, no reminders of wealth around him. Instead, there was discipline, simplicity, and an emphasis on earning respect, not inheriting it. This unusual mix of emotional struggle and disciplined upbringing nurtured inside him a gentleness rare among industry titans. The pain of his parents' separation instilled empathy. The strict yet loving presence of his grandmother cultivated strength. And the legacy of the Tata family taught him the value of serving others before serving oneself. Growing up, Ratan was a quiet, introspective child. He observed more than he spoke. He listened more than he argued. He absorbed the world around him with sensitivity and curiosity. His early school years shaped his understanding of people, how they behave, how they hurt, how they react, and how they hide their true selves behind layers of pride or fear. Even as a child, he displayed a calm wisdom, preferring to solve problems peacefully, often stepping away from chaos rather than diving into it. His nature was not aggressive, it was thoughtful, measured, considerate. And yet beneath that calm exterior burned a fire, a desire to prove himself, not as the heir of the Tata Empire, but as a human being with dignity and potential. Ratan often found solace in books, creativity, and the natural world. He developed an early interest in architecture, a field that allowed him to imagine structure in a world where his own had once collapsed. He loved the idea of building things from scratch, shaping the future with his hands, crafting something beautiful out of nothing. Maybe, deep inside, architecture appealed to him because it was the opposite of his childhood, where everything stable had unexpectedly broken apart. Architecture represented stability, precision, permanence. It gave him a sense of control over form, design, and purpose. In many ways, his interest in design would later shape the destiny of the Tata Group. But as much as Ratan's childhood taught him independence, it also exposed him to loneliness. Even in the midst of a powerful family, he often felt like an outsider, different in his thinking, different in his emotions, different in his quiet personality. This solitude, however, became the foundation of his strength. It taught him how to rely on himself. It taught him how to make decisions without fear of judgment. And most importantly, it taught him how to stay true to who he was, even when the world expected him to be someone else. Through every moment, painful or peaceful, Ratan absorbed values that would later define his leadership: integrity, compassion, resilience, and humility. His grandmother taught him that arrogance is weakness disguised as confidence. His family taught him that wealth means responsibility, not privilege. And his childhood taught him that true strength comes from surviving the storms silently and emerging wiser, calmer, and more determined. Little did the world know that the quiet boy walking the corridors of school, carrying inside him the weight of emotional loss and the discipline of a powerful legacy, would one day become a global icon, revered not for his wealth but for his heart, for his character, for his devotion to making life better for millions. This was not just the childhood of a business leader. This was the shaping of a man who would grow into a symbol of goodness, integrity, and selfless leadership, a man whose early wounds would one day become his wisdom, and whose silent struggles would one day inspire an entire nation. As Ratan Tata grew older, the walls of his childhood, shaped by discipline, emotional resilience, and quiet introspection, began expanding into a horizon filled with new experiences, new ambitions, and new challenges. His grandmother had given him not only a loving home but a foundation strong enough to stand upon as he prepared to step into the world beyond familiar walls. When it came time for higher education, Ratan found himself drawn toward the idea of learning far away from the expectations and shadows of his lineage. The decision to leave India and pursue studies in the United States was not just an academic choice, it was a symbolic step toward independence, a chance for him to understand himself without the weight of the Tata surname defining him. And so, at a young age, Ratan embarked on a journey across oceans, landing in a world dramatically different from the one he had known. Arriving in America exposed Ratan to a culture that was fast-paced, free-spirited, expressive, and unrestrained. It was a place where individuals spoke their minds without fear, where students challenged professors, where young people lived with a boldness he had rarely seen in India. For someone as gentle, reserved, and quiet as Ratan, this environment was both intimidating and liberating. He saw people embracing life with a freedom that was new to him, a sense of independence that sparked something inside his own character. At Cornell University, where he pursued architecture, Ratan experienced a world that blended creativity with mathematics, emotion with structure, imagination with discipline. Architecture resonated deeply with him, not just as a subject but as a philosophy. The idea of designing something from the ground up, respecting its curves, stability, and character, matched the way he viewed life. In those long nights spent sketching, planning, imagining, he unknowingly prepared himself to one day reshape the Tata Empire with the same careful balance of heart and logic. Life in America was not luxurious for him. Despite belonging to a wealthy family, Ratan refused to seek special favors or enjoy privileges. He lived like an ordinary student, experiencing the struggles and simplicity of everyday life. Many nights, he cooked simple meals for himself. Many days, he walked long distances across campus, feeling the harsh winters and experiencing independence in its most raw form. For the first time, he was responsible for every choice he made, what he ate, how he lived, how he managed time, how he balanced pressure. This independence molded him into a man who valued self-reliance and disliked depending on others. It also taught him empathy. He understood what ordinary people faced, what it meant to earn a living, and how difficult life could be without support. Beyond academics, Ratan's time in America introduced him to a deeper understanding of himself. He learned that although he carried the name of one of India's most powerful families, he had the heart of a gentle dreamer. He was not a loud or flamboyant leader. He was not someone who thrived on spotlight or domination. Instead, his strength was internal, quiet, thoughtful, strategic, deeply empathetic. America helped him realize that true leadership does not always come from aggression, sometimes it comes from gentleness, from listening, from observing, from understanding people deeply. During his years abroad, Ratan also experienced loneliness. He missed home, missed the warmth of his grandmother, missed the comfort of familiar faces. But this loneliness became his teacher, pushing him to grow emotionally, pushing him to connect with himself on a deeper level. He began to understand the importance of balance, between ambition and peace, between achievement and compassion, between responsibility and self-care. These lessons would later become the foundation of his leadership style. Ratan's time at Cornell also fueled his love for design and creativity, shaping his aesthetic sense and his desire to innovate. Whether he was studying urban planning or sketching complex structures, he learned to think visually, to imagine possibilities others could not see, to break away from conventional thinking. This ability to blend creativity with logic would later help him launch game-changing products like the Tata Indica and Tata Nano, and envision bold acquisitions that many considered impossible. After completing his degree, Rutten briefly worked in Los Angeles, gaining exposure to the professional world. He observed how businesses functioned globally, how decisions were made, how employees were treated, and how innovation drove success. This practical experience enriched his understanding of the business ecosystem. But despite the promising opportunities abroad, Rutten felt a tug inside his heart, a call to return home. He knew there was something he needed to do in India, something greater than himself. He carried with him all the lessons learned overseas, the independence, the discipline, the humility, the creativity, the global perspective, and brought them back to a nation that was on the brink of change. Returning to India was not a return to privilege, it was the beginning of responsibility. He was no longer a student, he was a young man ready to build, ready to contribute, ready to prove that he belonged not because of his family name but because of his own capability. With every step back onto Indian soil, Rutten felt the weight of the future resting quietly on his shoulders. When Ratan Tata returned to India after years of academic rigor and personal transformation in the United States, he did not step into a luxurious office or an executive suite, nor did he inherit a powerful leadership role simply because he belonged to the Tata family. Instead, he stepped into the beating heart of Tata Steel, the factory floors, the furnaces, the noise, the sweat, the heat, and the smell of molten metal. In an age where most business heirs preferred air-conditioned cabins and polished conference rooms, Rutten chose the path of humility. He believed that true leadership could only be earned by understanding the realities of the people who formed the backbone of the company. And so, armed not with a title but with curiosity, sincerity, and a desire to learn, he walked into the factory grounds as an ordinary trainee. No special treatment, no shortcuts, no privileges. The steel plant was a world unlike anything he had experienced abroad. The air was thick with smoke and steam, the machinery roared like living beasts, the temperatures near the blast furnaces were so intense that even a few minutes felt unbearable. But Rutten did not flinch. He put on the same helmet and uniform as the workers. He ate in the same canteen with them. He stood beside them, watching, listening, learning how steel was made, how machines behaved, how every small effort by every worker contributed to the creation of something monumental. For the first time, he understood the true meaning of industrial work, the effort, the discipline, the danger, and the commitment of thousands of workers who never saw the limelight but kept the Tata Empire alive through their dedication. The workers, too, observed him silently. They had seen rich men visit the factory, check the premises with interest, and leave within an hour. But here was a young man who stayed for hours, sweating, observing every small detail, asking questions with humility rather than superiority, treating every worker with respect rather than authority. They began to notice that Rutten did not behave like a typical heir or a boss. He folded his sleeves, picked up tools, and participated in manual tasks. He stood near the red-hot furnaces, listening to experienced workers explain how steel is shaped and controlled. He learned how the vibrations of machinery indicated their health. He understood how long shifts impacted the human body. He noticed how deeply the workers cared about the company and its legacy. One day, while working during an extremely hot shift near the furnace, Rutten saw a worker collapse from heat exhaustion. The sight shook him deeply. He helped carry the man to safety and watched as fellow workers treated him with the urgency and care reserved for family. That moment left a permanent mark on Rutten's soul. He realized that leadership was not about power, it was about people. It was about protecting them, supporting them, and making decisions that honored their sacrifice. This experience became one of the guiding pillars of his future leadership philosophy. Working on the shop floor also taught Rutten about humility in a way no classroom ever could. There were moments when workers corrected him, moments when he made mistakes, moments when he failed to grasp complex processes quickly. But instead of feeling insulted or defensive, he welcomed every correction with gratitude. He had no ego, no sense of superiority. Every day, he returned home exhausted, not the exhaustion of mental stress but the physical exhaustion that comes from real labor. And every day, he grew more connected to the workers, more aware of their struggles, and more determined to someday improve their lives. During these months, Ratan saw countless stories hidden within the factory walls. He saw workers who had spent 30 years of their life inside the plant, sacrificing time with their families, breathing in dust and smoke, and giving everything to keep the Tata legacy alive. He witnessed the pride in their eyes when they spoke about the company, the love they carried for their work, the loyalty they held toward the Tata name. This emotional connection strengthened Ratan's belief that his life's mission was not just business, it was service. He wanted to build a company where workers felt valued, respected, and protected. Over time, the workers grew to admire him, not because of his family name, but because of his character. They saw a leader who wasn't afraid to sweat, a leader who wasn't afraid to learn, a leader who treated the lowest-ranking worker with the same respect he would give to a chairman. This earned respect became the foundation of Ratan Tata's leadership style. The factory had shaped his personality, his values, his outlook toward business. It taught him that decisions made from a boardroom often did not reflect the realities of the factory floor, and he promised himself that he would never forget the lessons learned in those hot, noisy, demanding environments. By the time Ratan completed his training at Tata Steel, he was no longer just the young heir of a powerful family, he was a leader shaped by experience, humility, and empathy. He had learned that leadership must begin from the ground up. He had witnessed firsthand the human strength behind industrial success. And he carried those lessons with him, ready to take on bigger challenges, ready to face resistance, ready to build a legacy that honored every worker he had walked beside. His journey through the factory was not just a phase, it was the transformation that prepared him to one day lead the entire Tata empire with grace, courage, and a heart deeply connected to the people who made it all possible. When Ratan Tata stepped into the leadership of the Tata Group in 1991, he didn't walk into applause, celebration, or unanimous support. Instead, he walked into a storm, one filled with skepticism, criticism, and quiet revolt from within his own organization. The Tata Empire at that time was massive but scattered, its companies functioning like independent kingdoms rather than parts of a united vision. Many senior executives had grown powerful over decades, controlling divisions as if they were personal empires, and the idea of a gentle, soft-spoken, humble man like Ratan Tata suddenly becoming chairman did not sit well with them. They doubted his strength. They doubted his silence. They doubted his courage. They doubted whether a man who once worked on the shop floor, who preferred calm conversation over aggressive domination, could ever lead the giant industrial powerhouse built by the legendary J.R.D. Tata. From the very first day, Ratan felt the cold wind of resistance. Senior executives questioned his decisions. They challenged his authority. Some even ignored his instructions, believing he lacked the assertiveness needed to control such a vast empire. The boardrooms that should have echoed with strategy and unity instead crackled with tension. Reports were withheld. Meetings were avoided. And whispers spread through corridors that Ratan Tata was too soft, too inexperienced, and too gentle to lead the Tata Group into the future. But what they did not understand was that beneath Ratan's quiet voice lay a mind of steel, calm, firm, unshakable. Ratan had a vision, and it wasn't a small one. He believed the Tata Group needed to modernize, unify, and adapt to a rapidly changing world. The economy of India was opening up. Global competition was rising. Innovation was becoming the heart of industry. And Ratan knew that without transformation, the Tata Empire risked fading into irrelevance. So despite the resistance, he began restructuring, slowly, firmly, and with unbreakable determination. He pushed for tighter group collaboration, centralized decision-making, and a unified identity. This meant challenging long-standing habits, breaking old power structures, and confronting leaders who believed the company belonged to them rather than to the vision of its founders. Every step he took was met with pushback. Some executives even threatened to resign. Others believed they could outlast him, waiting for him to fail and step aside. But Ratan was not a man who backed away from difficulty. He had learned resilience through personal pain. He had learned humility through factory work. He had learned discipline through his grandmother's guidance. And now he would use all those lessons to lead through one of the toughest chapters in Tata history. His calmness confused his opponents. They mistook his silence for weakness, unaware that he was quietly studying every move, every ego, every challenge. He did not shout. He did not argue. He did not threaten. Instead, he allowed resistance to expose itself fully before he acted with precision. And when he made decisions, they were measured, thoughtful, and aligned with the long-term impact on the company rather than short-term popularity. One of Ratan's most controversial decisions was to set a retirement age for senior leaders. Many top executives had held their power positions for decades. They believed they were irreplaceable. Ratan believed otherwise. He introduced the rule, shocking the organization. Those who thought they were invincible suddenly found themselves having to step down gracefully or risk dismissal. This move alone reshaped the leadership structure and opened doors for the next generation of talent, young minds with fresh ideas, willing to embrace innovation and global thinking. Ratan also made major decisions about global expansion, something the old guard resisted fiercely. They preferred playing safe, staying comfortable within the boundaries of India, avoiding risks, and protecting old systems. But Ratan knew that the future would belong to companies bold enough to cross borders, acquire global brands, and earn international respect. His dreams were bigger than their fears. And slowly, as results began to show, even his harshest critics started to recognize the brilliance behind his calm leadership. But the transformation wasn't just strategic, it was emotional. Ratan knew the Tata Group had lost some of the warmth and human spirit it once carried. The company had become structured, mechanical, disconnected from the workers and customers who formed its foundation. Ratan wanted to restore that human touch. He visited factories, spoke to workers, sat with engineers, addressed employees personally, and made decisions based not only on numbers but on compassion. He believed that a company should not only produce profits, it should produce dignity. And yet, throughout this transformation, he often found himself alone. Late nights in his office became normal. Long hours of thinking, planning, and absorbing pressure became part of his daily life. There were times when the silence of his room echoed louder than any criticism. There were nights when even he must have wondered how long he could fight a battle he never asked for. But his sense of duty, his loyalty to the Tata legacy, and his quiet but unwavering courage kept him going. Slowly, the resistance began to fade. Not because his opponents suddenly supported him, but because they saw results they could not deny. Projects improved. Structures strengthened. Talent grew. Vision expanded. And gradually, the same people who once doubted him began acknowledging that Ratan Tata was not just a worthy successor, he was a leader destined to elevate the Tata name to heights even J.R.D. Tata had once only dreamed of. What began as a chapter of resistance became the proving ground of Ratan's strength. He had shown that leadership is not about the loudest voice, it is about the clearest vision. It is not about dominating others, it is about inspiring them. And it is not about being feared, it is about being trusted. This was the chapter where Ratan Tata transformed from heir to leader, from a quiet gentleman to a visionary force, from an underestimated figure to a man who would soon redefine Indian industry on a global scale. In this phase of Ratan Tata's life, the world finally began to see the boldness, courage, and quiet fearlessness hidden beneath his calm personality. Ratan Tata was never loud, never aggressive, never dramatic, yet inside him lived a man who believed in taking decisions so big, so impossible, that most leaders would fear merely thinking about them. As the 1990s unfolded and India opened its economy to the world, Ratan Tata saw this not as a threat but as an opportunity. Many Indian companies were scared, worried that foreign giants would crush them, but Ratan Tata believed something different. He believed that Indian companies could stand on the global stage with pride, strength, and innovation. And so began the era of decisions that shaped the future of the Tata Group forever. One of his first moves was to focus on unity within Tata itself. When he took leadership, the Tata Group was spread across dozens of companies, each working independently, with no central identity. Ratan Tata wanted to build one united brand the world would recognize, Tata. But change is never easy. Many old leaders resisted him, questioning why a man so humble, soft-spoken, and young compared to the older chairman should be allowed to reshape a century-old empire. Ratan Tata faced opposition, criticism, even internal rejection, but not once did he raise his voice, he simply raised the clarity of his vision. Slowly but firmly, he brought all companies under one Tata logo, one Tata identity, and one unified dream. He wasn't trying to gain power, he was trying to build a future that would outlive him. And it wasn't long before he made another bold move. He pushed Tata companies to embrace modern technology, global design, new systems, and world-class quality, something many believed was impossible for Indian companies at that time. Under his leadership, Tata Motors began creating cars that could compete internationally. Tata Tea expanded far beyond India. Tata Steel modernized its operations. Everywhere he went, Ratan Tata asked only one question: can we be better than yesterday? This question became the heartbeat of the entire group. But the real test of his boldness came when he decided that Tata would no longer just survive against global giants, it would acquire them. It was a shocking idea, Indian companies buying massive foreign corporations. Almost no one believed it could happen. But Ratan Tata believed. He saw a future where Tata would not only grow inside India, but become a global powerhouse respected in every corner of the world. And so he set his sights on two of the largest, most iconic businesses in the world, Tetley and Chorus. People called it madness. Ambition, overreach, but Ratan Tata called it courage. With calm determination, he built teams, structured deals, removed obstacles, and moved forward while the world watched with disbelief. And when Tata successfully acquired Tetley, it marked the beginning of a new chapter for Indian industry. For the first time, India was not being bought, it was buying. Ratan Tata showed the nation that dreams must never be small. But this was only the beginning. Even as he worked on global growth, he stayed deeply connected to the struggles of everyday Indians. He wanted to build a car that even a humble scooter-riding family could afford safely, a dream that would soon transform into the Tata Nano. People said it was impossible, but Ratan Tata was a man who made the impossible a goal, not a barrier. Step by step, decision by decision, challenge by challenge, he shaped a new Tata, a Tata that was global yet Indian, bold yet compassionate, modern yet rooted in values. This era became the period where the world finally understood the true power of quiet leadership. Ratan Tata didn't inspire with speeches, he inspired with action. He didn't lead through fear, he led through example. He didn't dominate others, he elevated them. And through all of this, his vision grew bigger, his courage grew stronger, and his belief in Indian potential became unshakable. Part 5 stands as the turning point in his journey, the moment where ambition met execution, where vision met reality, and where Ratan Tata quietly built the foundation of a global legacy that would inspire millions long after he was gone. In this powerful chapter of Ratan Tata's journey, we see one of the greatest examples of his heart, his courage, and his ability to dream for others, not just for himself. While many business leaders chase profits, power, and prestige, Ratan Tata chased something far more meaningful: humanity. And it was from this humanity that the dream of the Tata Nano was born. One rainy afternoon in Bangalore, Ratan Tata watched a small family riding on a scooter, father driving, mother sitting sideways, and two children squeezed dangerously between them. That moment struck him deeply. Most industrialists would pass by without a thought, but Ratan Tata felt a responsibility. He whispered to himself, there has to be a safer, affordable way for such families. That thought lit a spark, and that spark grew into a vision the world would soon call the people's car. But creating the Tata Nano wasn't just a business project, it was a mission to give dignity and safety to millions of Indian families. Ratan Tata declared that the car must cost only 1 lakh rupees, a dream so daring that even his own engineers told him it couldn't be done. Critics laughed, industries mocked him, foreign companies dismissed him, and the world said, "It's impossible." But Ratan Tata had never been the kind of leader who measured dreams by difficulty. He measured them by impact. And with unshakable calmness, he simply said, "We will do it." What followed was one of the most challenging engineering journeys in Indian history. Engineers worked day and night, redesigning parts, rethinking structure, reinventing manufacturing processes, all to fit within that one relentless goal. And through every setback, Ratan Tata stood firmly with them. He visited factories, asked questions, motivated workers, and reminded everyone why they were doing this, not for fame, not for profits, but for the common Indian family who deserved a better life. In 2008, the day finally came when Ratan Tata unveiled the Tata Nano to the world. As he stood on that stage, he didn't boast, he didn't brag, he simply said with pride, "This is my gift to India." The world was stunned. A safe, functional, four-wheeler for the price of a motorcycle, it was innovation at its purest, leadership at its strongest, and compassion at its most beautiful. But the journey didn't stay smooth. Soon after the launch, the Nano faced challenges: production delays, misinformation campaigns, factory protests, negative media narratives. Cars catching fire, some real, many exaggerated, became headlines worldwide. Critics mocked it as the cheapest car, turning pride into ridicule. Many leaders would have backed off, abandoned the project, or blamed others. But Ratan Tata did something extraordinary: he took responsibility. He stood by the car, stood by the team, and stood by the people who believed in him. When the Singur factory project collapsed due to protests, Ratan Tata made a decision that would test every ounce of his strength. He shut down the entire plant and relocated everything to Gujarat. Imagine the stress, the loss, the logistics, the criticism, but he never lost his composure. He once again proved that leadership isn't about convenience, it's about commitment. Though the Nano did not commercially thrive, Ratan Tata never considered it a failure. To him, failure is not in the outcome, it is in giving up. And Ratan Tata never gave up. He believed that the Nano had already fulfilled its purpose: it inspired innovation, it pushed boundaries, it challenged the world's assumptions about Indian capability. More importantly, it showed India what kind of leader Ratan Tata truly was: a man with the courage to dream for the powerless, the humility to accept setbacks, and the strength to walk through storms with dignity. In this part of Ratan Tata's journey, we witnessed the chapter that changed not only the Tata Group but also the identity of Indian business on the global map, the era of international acquisitions, where Ratan Tata dared to do what no Indian industrialist had ever attempted. He believed that India was no longer a follower, it was ready to lead. And he wanted the Tata Group to symbolize that new India: confident, courageous, and capable of competing with the world's biggest companies. His pursuit of global expansion began quietly, without noise or media attention, driven by a simple philosophy: India deserved a place at the global table, not as a guest, but as a leader. Ratan Tata looked beyond borders. Beyond limitations, beyond the fear that had held Indian companies back for decades. In his eyes, buying foreign companies was not about power, it was about respect, identity, and proving that Indian innovation could stand shoulder to shoulder with global giants. The first major target was Tetley Tea in the United Kingdom, a brand older than the Tata Group itself. People called it impossible, an Indian company buying a British brand that once symbolized colonial dominance. Critics laughed. Bankers resisted. Analysts predicted disaster. But Ratan Tata remained calm. He trusted his team, studied every detail, and pushed forward with quiet conviction. And when the acquisition was completed in 2000, it sent shockwaves across the world. For the first time in history, an Indian company had acquired a global leader. It was a historic reversal. India was no longer being conquered, India was conquering. This moment became a turning point, but Ratan Tata didn't stop there. He was just getting started. His next target was even larger: Corus Steel, one of Europe's biggest steel manufacturers. This deal was so huge that it would become one of the largest takeovers ever done by an Indian company. Once again, the world doubted him. Tata cannot pull this off. India cannot pull this off. In this part of Ratan Tata's journey, we witness the chapter that changed not only the Tata Group but also the identity of Indian business on the global map, the era of international acquisitions, where Ratan Tata dared to do what no Indian industrialist had ever attempted. He believed that India was no longer a follower, it was ready to lead. And he wanted the Tata Group to symbolize that new India, confident, courageous, and capable of competing with the world's biggest companies. His pursuit of global expansion began quietly, without noise or media attention, driven by a simple philosophy: India deserved a place at the global table, not as a guest, but as a leader. Ratan Tata looked beyond borders. Beyond limitations, beyond the fear that had held Indian companies back for decades. In his eyes, buying foreign companies was not about power, it was about respect, identity, and proving that Indian innovation could stand shoulder to shoulder with global giants. The first major target was Tetley Tea in the United Kingdom, a brand older than the Tata Group itself. People called it impossible, an Indian company buying a British brand that once symbolized colonial dominance. Critics laughed. Bankers resisted. Analysts predicted disaster. But Ratan Tata remained calm. He trusted his team, studied every detail, and pushed forward with quiet conviction. And when the acquisition was completed in 2000, it sent shockwaves across the world. For the first time in history, an Indian company had acquired a global leader. It was a historic reversal. India was no longer being conquered, India was conquering. This moment became a turning point, but Ratan Tata didn't stop there. He was just getting started. His next target was even larger: Corus Steel, one of Europe's biggest steel manufacturers. This deal was so huge that it would become one of the largest takeovers ever done by an Indian company. Once again, the world doubted him. Tata cannot pull this off. India cannot pull this off. But Ratan Tata, with his quiet dignity, never reacted emotionally. He simply let the results speak. And in 2008, Tata Motors acquired Jaguar Land Rover, one of the boldest, most historic moves in automotive history. The world was stunned. And soon after, under Tata's leadership, JLR transformed from near bankruptcy into a global success story. It became profitable, innovative, and admired worldwide. Critics who once mocked Tata now praised the group's leadership. And through all this, Ratan Tata never boasted. He never claimed personal credit. He always highlighted his teams and believed the success belonged to the country, not him. These acquisitions didn't just expand Tata's empire, they redefined India's image. They announced to the world that India was not just a source of cheap labor, but a birthplace of global leaders, innovators, and visionaries. Ratan Tata taught the nation that dreams must not be limited by geography, fear, or history. This chapter represents the height of his courage, the peak of his strategic brilliance, and the moment he proved that Indian companies could rise higher than anyone had imagined. Part 7 is the story of India's global pride, a chapter where one quiet, humble man changed the world's view of an entire nation. As we conclude the remarkable journey of Ratan Tata, it is impossible not to reflect on the depth, breadth, and impact of a life devoted to excellence, integrity, and humanity. From his early days marked by personal loss and the guiding influence of his grandmother, to the formative experiences on the shop floors of Tata Steel, to his rise as chairman of one of the most respected conglomerates in the world, Ratan Tata's life is a testament to the power of resilience, humility, and visionary leadership. Every challenge he faced, whether internal resistance from within the organization, skepticism from global markets, or setbacks in ventures such as the Tata Nano, was met not with arrogance, but with calm determination, patience, and a steadfast belief in doing what is right over what is easy. His tenure as a leader redefined Indian business, proving that one could expand globally, acquire iconic brands like Tetley, Corus, and Jaguar Land Rover, and achieve unprecedented success without sacrificing ethics, compassion, or human values. Beyond boardrooms and balance sheets, Ratan Tata's true legacy lies in the countless lives he touched through philanthropy, mentorship, and personal acts of kindness. Hospitals, schools, scholarships, disaster relief programs, and support for rural development initiatives reflect a man who consistently put humanity before profit, service before self-interest. Chorus, and Jaguar Land Rover, and achieve unprecedented success without sacrificing ethics, compassion, or human values. Beyond boardrooms and balance sheets, Ratan Tata's true legacy lies in the countless lives he touched through philanthropy, mentorship, and personal acts of kindness. Hospitals, schools, scholarships, disaster relief programs, and support for rural development initiatives reflect a man who consistently put humanity before profit, service before self-interest. Chorus, and Jaguar Land Rover, and achieve unprecedented success without sacrificing ethics, compassion, or human values. Beyond boardrooms and balance sheets, Ratan Tata's true legacy lies in the countless lives he touched through philanthropy, mentorship, and personal acts of kindness. Hospitals, schools, scholarships, disaster relief programs, and support for rural development initiatives reflect a man who consistently put humanity before profit, service before self-interest. Chorus, and Jaguar Land Rover, and achieve unprecedented success without sacrificing ethics, compassion, or human values. Beyond boardrooms and balance sheets, Ratan Tata's true legacy lies in the countless lives he touched through philanthropy, mentorship, and personal acts of kindness. Hospitals, schools, scholarships, disaster relief programs, and support for rural development initiatives reflect a man who consistently put humanity before profit, service before self-interest. Chorus, and Jaguar Land Rover, and achieve unprecedented success without sacrificing ethics, compassion, or human values. Beyond boardrooms and balance sheets, Ratan Tata's true legacy lies in the countless lives he touched through philanthropy, mentorship, and personal acts of kindness. Hospitals, schools, scholarships, disaster relief programs, and support for rural development initiatives reflect a man who consistently put humanity before profit, service before self-interest. Chorus, and Jaguar Land Rover, and achieve unprecedented success without sacrificing ethics, compassion, or human values. Beyond boardrooms and balance sheets, Ratan Tata's true legacy lies in the countless lives he touched through philanthropy, mentorship, and personal acts of kindness. Hospitals, schools, scholarships, disaster relief programs, and support for rural development initiatives reflect a man who consistently put humanity before profit, service before self-interest.